Good day, grade 7 students. I am Sir John, and I will be with you as we study about science. Tara, let's learn together. In today's lesson, we will be talking about heat transfer, which is a part of our lesson for the week 7 to 8 of 3rd quarter. The most essential learning competency indicated in our pivot for a budget of work for this week is infer the conditions necessary for heat transfer to occur. Today's lesson is from Pivot for a Learner's Pocket, which is used by grade 7 in Calabarzon region. Special thanks to Miss Marilyn A. Ongkiko from Region 4A for sharing your expertise for the content of this lesson. For the first part of this lesson, try to hold an ice cube in your hand. After a while, the warmth of your hand is replaced by a cold sensation. You may say that the heat escaped from your hand. However, the coldness of your hand is due to the lowering of the temperature caused by the energy that transferred from your hand to the ice. So, have you ever wondered how objects become colder and warmer? Try to answer the following questions using the picture on the screen. First is, what do you think will happen to the pan on top of the stove? Another is, what do you think will happen to the metal spoon if the boy leaves it in the pan? Why do you think it happened? All objects possess energy, which exists in different forms. Although we cannot hold or touch it, energy could help us explain how and why things behave the way they do. We often classify objects as cool or warm. Oftentimes, by using our sense of touch, the hand or the skin, or with the help of a thermometer. And this phenomenon is a result of the process known as the heat transfer. To fully understand this concept, study the following terms. Thermal energy is a type of energy stored in an object or system that depends on the motion of the particles or atom. When the particles of matter move fast, it increases the thermal energy inside it. But when the particles of matter move slow, it decreases its thermal energy. Any object is said to possess thermal energy due to the movement of its particles. Thermal energy can be transformed into other forms or transferred to another object or places. Temperature measures the amount of thermal energy, or the degree of hotness and coldness of an object or system. An instrument called as the thermometer can be used to get the temperature. Heat is the transfer of thermal energy from a body with a higher temperature to a body with lower temperature. It is also a form of energy that refers to the thermal energy that is in transit or in the process of being transferred. And the last term is heat transfer. It is the transfer of heat to different medium or forms of matter. The flow of heat within an object and from an object to another due to differences in temperature. When thermal energy is transferred from warmer objects to cooler objects, heat is being released. When thermal energy is being transferred, the warmer object cools down and the cooler object warms up until both objects attain the same temperature. Then heat transfer stops. Heat, just like all forms of energy, is measured in a unit called joules. The mode of heat transfer depends on whether the substance is a solid, a liquid, or a gas, each of which has different properties. Take note that energy is not lost but only changes in form according to the first law of thermodynamics. This makes it possible for the energy from the fire to be transferred into the pot, towards the soup, and into the spoon. The process of heat transfer can happen in three ways. These are conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction is the heat transfer between objects, usually solids, or particles that are directly in contact with each other when one object's temperature rises. For example, the heat from the fire is transferred to the pot. The heat from the pot is transferred into the soup. The heat from the soup is transferred to the spoon. The heat from the spoon is transferred to your hand as you touch it. Some materials readily conduct heat. They are known as good conductors of heat. Metals are the best conductors of heat because it is easy for the atoms of molecules of metal to transfer their energy to atoms or molecules that are nearby. On the other hand, there are materials that are called insulators. They slow down the conduction of heat. Paper, cork, rubber, wood, wool, and styrofoam are good insulators. Convection is the heat transfer from one location to another through fluids, just like liquids or gases. The moving fluid carries energy with it as it flows from a high temperature location to a low temperature location. For example, when air is heated, it becomes less dense or lighter and float. But when air is cooled down, it becomes denser or heavier and it sinks to the bottom. This is useful for the hot air balloon. The flame hits the air inside the hot air balloon, allowing it to float. And when it is reduced, the balloon starts to sink or move downward. And the last mode of the heat transfer is radiation. It is the heat transfer by electromagnetic waves through space. It does not require the interaction between matter or the transfer of energy without physical contact. It takes place even in the absence of material. For example, the heat from the sun warms the different parts of the earth. You can feel the heat from the sun even if you cannot touch it. Going back to our previous example a while ago, let us try to identify the types of heat transfer that occurred in the process. The heat from the fire is transferred to the pot by radiation, where the heat travels through waves. The heat from the pot is then transferred into the soup in the process of conduction, where heat is transferred by direct contact between materials. When we stir the soup with a spoon or a ladle, the heat from the soup is transferred into the spoon with the help of convection, where heat is transferred through the help of fluids. And when we touch the spoon, we feel the heat from the spoon to our hands by conduction. But the heat coming from the boiling pot of soup can be felt even if we do not touch it because of radiation. So, you see, a simple activity like this involves a lot of process to happen. Isn't it amazing? Identify the figure that correctly shows the conduction of heat with a system of metal blocks. Analyze the given choices on your screen. At this point, you have learned that heat is the transfer of thermal energy. This energy is possessed by an object due to the motion of its particles. When object's thermal energy increase, its temperature changes from cool to warmer. When heat is absorbed from one material to another, heat transfer occurs. This process can happen in three ways. We have conduction, where heat is transferred between materials that are in direct contact with each other, while radiation occurs when heat is transferred by electromagnetic waves through space. And lastly, convection, where heat is transferred in fluids like gases and liquids, which making the hot fluids to rise and cold fluids to sink. And when heat is absorbed from one material to another, heat transfer occurs. That ends up our lesson for the day. I hope you learned something from this video. Thank you for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. We'll see each other again for our next video. Keep going and keep learning.